She walked 10 miles to deliver Thanksgiving pie. Rancher said, "Why?" She said, "You're alone." The dawn broke slowly over the plains of Willow Creek, pink and gold stretching across the sky like a quiet promise. Roosters crowed in the far distance, and the world woke in gentle pieces, one bird call, one drifting breeze, one shifting ray of morning light at a time. But inside a small clapboard house on the east edge of town, Anna Grace Wheeler was already awake. Her hands, small but sure, pressed into a mound of dough on the wooden kitchen table. She had risen long before first light, guided by something she couldn't quite explain. The kind of nudge that makes a person sit upright in bed and whisper, "Lord, is that you?" She didn't hear a voice. No vision. No thunder from heaven. Just one persistent tug on her spirit. Elijah Boone. A name she hadn't spoken aloud in many months. A man the town rarely mentioned anymore, except in hushed tones, the way people speak of those whose grief has turned into walls. Anna Grace dusted the dough with flour, folding it, turning it, rolling it with practiced grace. As she worked, morning light slowly filled the kitchen, casting a pale shimmer across the pie tin waiting beside her. Pumpkin filling simmered on the stove, its scent warm and comforting. Nutmeg, cinnamon, a hint of vanilla. The fragrance made the tiny house feel alive. But Anna Grace's thoughts wandered. Elijah Boone. 3 years widowed. 3 years silent. 3 years skipping service, keeping to himself, letting dust settle where conversation used to be. Folks said he preferred it that way. Anna Grace didn't believe it. People don't choose loneliness. They fall into it like a well they don't know how to climb out of. She murmured softly as she stirred the filling. The Lord brings the lonely into families. Her lips shaped the verse like a prayer. This whole morning felt like a prayer. When she poured the filling into the crust, she glanced toward the window. A faint frost clung to the pane. Outside, the sky was clear, but the cold looked sharp enough to cut. Walking 10 miles in it? Most folks would call that foolish. But when she closed her eyes, she felt peace, and she'd learned long ago that peace was usually the Lord's way of urging her forward. She slid the pie into the oven, wiped her hands on her apron, and knelt beside her kitchen chair. Not out of ritual. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to hear God clearly. "Lord," she whispered, "this pie could go to anyone. Anyone at all. But you've pressed one man on my heart. If I'm mistaken, stop me. If I'm right, go with me." A warmth stirred inside her, not emotional, not imagined. Something holy. Gentle, calming, like sunlight warming through a winter window. She rose and exhaled slowly. It was time. The journey begins. By the time the pie cooled, wrapped in a cloth-lined tin, and tucked carefully into her hands, Willow Creek was fully awake. People hurried along the main street preparing for Thanksgiving gatherings. Flour-dusted shop windows. Men hammered boards over the front of the church to hang wreaths. Children ran with excitement, shouting about pies and turkeys. Everyone had somewhere to be. Everyone except Elijah Boone. Anna Grace stepped past the last house in town and onto the dirt road leading toward the far valley. The path stretched outward, long, winding, exposed to the wind. 10 miles. 10 very real, very cold miles. She inhaled. Then she started walking. Her boots crunched rhythmically on the frosted earth. The air nipped at her cheeks, turning them rosy. Her breath formed small clouds that faded into the morning sky. The sun climbed higher, but its warmth barely brushed her. She held the pie tin close, protecting it from the wind with her shawl. As she walked, memories drifted through her mind, of her mama telling her that kindness often costs something. The best kindness, Mama always said, is the kind you do for someone who can't repay you. That memory steadied her steps. After 2 miles, the town disappeared behind her. After 4, her fingers went numb even beneath her gloves. After 5, she paused beside a cluster of pines, catching her breath, whispering, "Lord, you'll have to help me keep going." A gust of wind swept past, cold but oddly invigorating. She smiled. "Thank you." The inner battle. By mile 7, doubt crept in. What if he tells me to leave? What if he shuts the door in my face? What if he thinks I'm foolish? Her boots sank into a patch of soft earth, slowing her steps. People talked about Elijah Boone in ways that made him seem almost unreachable. A man carved from grief. A man whose silence had become his armor. A man who didn't want visitors. But beneath all that, she sensed something else. A man hurting. A man forgotten. A man God still loved. And God doesn't give up on his children. So she wouldn't either. The final stretch. The Boone Ranch came into view just as the sun reached its highest point. The land stretched wide and quiet, fenced but lonely. A few cattle grazed, their breaths fogging in the cold. Smoke did not rise from the chimney. The porch looked unused, the rocking chair still. Anna Grace slowed. Not out of fear, but out of reverence. Something about the ranch felt sacred in a broken way, like a place waiting for healing. She tightened her hold on the pie tin. "Lord, give me the right words," she whispered, stepping forward. Her feet climbed the porch steps. The wood creaked beneath her weight. A horse whinnied behind the barn. She raised her hand and knocked once, twice, then waited. The silence stretched. Anna Grace steadied herself, breathing deeply, praying silently. The door remained closed, and for a moment she wondered if he even heard. Then, footsteps. Heavy, slow, cautious. The door swung open, and there he stood. Elijah Boone. Tall, broad-shouldered. Eyes shadowed with years of unspoken sorrow. A man who looked as if life had weighed too heavily for too long. He stared at her, stunned. "Miss Wheeler?" His voice was rough and used. What are you doing way out here?" Anna Grace caught her breath, not just from the long walk but from the look in his eyes. Eyes that had forgotten softness. Eyes that didn't expect kindness. Her voice came out quiet but steady. "I brought you Thanksgiving pie. And for the first time in nearly 3 years." Elijah Boone didn't know what to say. The Boone Ranch had once been a place of warmth. Neighbors used to say you could smell Sarah Boone's biscuits half a mile downwind. Children used to race horses across the west pasture, their laughter trailing behind them. Church picnics were held under the big oak tree just beyond the barn. But that was before. Before the fever swept through Willow Creek. Before the smile faded from Elijah Boone's face. Before loneliness carved itself into the grain of the wooden walls and settled over the house like a blanket no one could shake off. Now the ranch stood quiet, too quiet. A stillness that felt less peaceful and more abandoned. A place frozen in time. The man the town stopped approaching. Elijah Boone was splitting wood behind the barn because it was the only thing that kept his mind from splintering with it. The repetitive swing of the axe, the thud as it hit the stump, the crack of wood splitting apart, it drowned out memories. He didn't choose the quiet life. It chose him the day he buried his wife. Town folks had tried it first. Pastor Hendricks brought soup. Mrs. Tilley from the mercantile dropped off fresh bread. Even the school children sent him a card covered in smudged drawings. But Elijah answered every kindness with silence. Not rudeness. Just emptiness. After a while people stopped trying. And Elijah convinced himself that was for the best. The world couldn't disappoint you if you shut it out first. The stranger on his porch. The axe slammed into wood one last time before Elijah straightened, rolling his shoulders. He wiped his brow with the back of his hand, breath forming thin clouds in the cold. That's when he heard it. The faintest crunch of footsteps on the frosted ground. Too slow to be a deer. Too light to be one of his ranch hands. And too purposeful to be the wind. He moved around the barn with wary caution, instinct kicking in. Out here, miles from town, unexpected footsteps meant something. Either trouble, or a miracle. What he found stopped him mid-step. A woman stood before his porch, breathless from the long walk, cheeks flushed pink from the cold, shawl fluttering in the wind. Her hands cupped a pie tin as though it were a sacred offering. Anna Grace Wheeler. He blinked, once, twice, unsure if his eyes deceived him. He hadn't seen her up close since Sarah's funeral. Her voice, gentle and wind-tinged, drifted toward him. "Good afternoon, Mr. Boone." He frowned, confusion thick in every line of his face. "Miss Wheeler, what are you doing out here?" His gaze dropped to her boots, muddy, worn, imperfect evidence of how far she'd walked. The ranch was 10 miles from town. 10 cold, unforgiving miles. "You walked?" he asked, disbelief scraping his voice. She nodded. "You walked all the way from town?" "Yes, sir." His chest tightened, not with anger but with something more complicated. Something he didn't want to feel. Concern. Guilt. Something like longing. And beneath all that, the faintest spark of defensiveness. Folks didn't just show up here. People didn't knock on his door anymore. He had built his world small on purpose. And now this woman, this gentle church-going schoolteacher, was standing on his porch with a pie like an angel who missed her turn and fell off the wagon trail. "Why?" he demanded, harsher than intended. The question hung between them, heavy and honest. How grief twists a man. Before she answered, Elijah's mind flashed back. To the look in Sarah's eyes the night she got sick. To the last time he held her hand. To the prayer he begged God to answer. And the silence that followed. After the funeral, he told himself a lie so big it felt easier to live with than the truth. If God loved me, he wouldn't have taken her. He stopped praying. stopped attending church, stopped opening the curtains in the kitchen where Sarah used to hum hymns as she cooked. Being alone was easier, safer. Until this moment when Anna Grace's presence unsettled everything. Why was she here? Why now? Why him? The truth that hit harder than an axe blow. She shifted gently, the pie tin glinting in the pale sunlight. Mr. Boone? I brought you something. He swallowed, but the dryness in his throat didn't ease. What for? Her answer was simple. Soft enough to stir the dust on the porch. Strong enough to knock the breath from his lungs. Because you're alone. The word struck him, cutting deeper than any axe. Loneliness was a truth he never admitted aloud. A shadow he learned how to live with. A burden he carried quietly so the world wouldn't see how heavy it was. But Anna Grace saw. She saw right through him, with eyes full of compassion that felt more dangerous than judgment. His first instinct was to retreat. To close up. Shut her out. Send her away. But something in her expression, gentle, unwavering, grace-filled, stole the strength from his defenses. He opened his mouth but nothing came out. How long had it been since someone looked at him like he wasn't a ghost of the man he used to be? A long time. Too long. The first crack in the wall. Anna Grace lowered her gaze briefly, not out of timidity, but out of respect for the hurt she sensed. I know you didn't ask for visitors, she said softly, but the Lord asked me to come. Elijah stiffened. The Lord. A name he avoided. A name that once brought comfort. A name he didn't know what to do with anymore. He clenched his jaw. God hasn't spoken to me in a long time. Her eyes lifted, kind and steady. Then maybe he's sending someone to speak to you. His breath hitched. No one had spoken to him so plainly, so tenderly, since Sarah. The wind rustled through the sagebrush. A hawk cried somewhere high above them. The ranch felt less empty somehow. Elijah Boone exhaled slowly. Then, almost against his own will, he stepped aside. A simple gesture. Small. Barely noticeable. But it was the first time in 3 years he had opened a door, literally or otherwise, to another soul. Elijah Boone stood in the doorway like a man torn between slamming it shut and stepping aside. His shoulders, broad, tired, dusted with wood shavings, were tense as a pulled rope. His breath fogged in the doorway, mixing with Anna Grace's. For a long, stretching moment, neither spoke. Wind swept along the porch, carrying the scent of pine and the thin whistle of winter pressing closer. The wood beneath Anna Grace's boots creaked as she shifted her weight. Elijah's eyes moved from her face to the pie tin in her hands, then back to her face again. Slowly, as though he were trying to puzzle out some scripture he hadn't read in years. Miss Wheeler, his voice cracked like old leather. You walked 10 miles. Alone. In the cold. Carry in? He motioned stiffly to the tin. That? Yes, sir. Her answer was calm, though her chest still rose and fell quickly from the long walk. You walked, he repeated as if saying it again might make it make sense. Yes. All the way from town? I did. He stared at her with a bewildered intensity that might have frightened another woman, but Anna Grace held her ground with a gentle steadiness. The truth was, Elijah Boone was not a hard man. He was a hurt man. And hurt can look like hardness until someone looks close enough to notice the cracks. His brows lowered, shadowing his eyes. Why? The question had weight. Years of solitude behind it. Years of people leaving him alone because he left them alone first. It wasn't suspicion. It wasn't anger. It was disbelief. Why would anyone come? Why would anyone care? Why would anyone walk 10 miles for him? Anna Grace swallowed softly, her breath visible in the cold. She held the pie a little closer to her chest, like a gift she knew he'd reject but couldn't keep to herself. Her voice came out quiet, but with conviction that felt older than she was. Because you're alone. The word that shook him. The way she said it. Not pitying. Not shaming. Just honest. Struck Elijah deeper than he expected. Alone. A simple word. One syllable. But it carried every night he ate supper in silence. Every morning he woke to an empty house. Every prayer he stopped praying. Every memory he tried to bury behind barns and wood chopping. Alone. His jaw tightened as he looked away, past her, toward the rolling fields behind her. The wind rippled through the dormant grasses, the world open and vast and utterly empty. Miss Wheeler, he began, but emotion tangled the words. Anna Grace stepped forward, not too close, just enough that her voice would reach him without shouting. I know you didn't ask for company. Elijah let out a humorless breath. That's an understatement. She smiled slightly. But the Lord pressed you on my heart this morning. Stronger than anything I've felt in a while. He stiffened at the mention of God, but not in anger. More like fear. Or longing, wearing the mask of fear. "And you obeyed?" he asked, tone gruff, almost disbelieving. "Of course. By walking 10 miles? Yes." He shook his head in disbelief. That's not reasonable, Miss Wheeler. I don't recall the Lord ever asking anyone to do something reasonable, Mr. Boone." That earned a soft huff from him, almost a laugh, but it broke before it formed. The man who thought God was done with him. Elijah braced a hand against the doorframe, fingers curling around the wood. Memories flickered behind his eyes, Sarah's laughter, her singing voice while cooking, their prayers at night. And the silence after. Silence so thick he thought God himself walked away and shut the door. His voice dropped. "Oh, rough. Confessional. Miss Wheeler. God hasn't spoken to me in a long time." Anna Grace's eyes softened. Maybe he has. Maybe grief was just louder. He blinked, startled. "Or maybe," she continued, "he's speaking now, and he sent someone because he knew you wouldn't hear him otherwise." The wind hushed, almost reverent. For the first time in years, Elijah didn't know what to say. A truth he couldn't run from. He looked at her then, the flush on her cheeks from the cold, the exhaustion in her stance, the unwavering brightness in her eyes. This woman didn't come with pity, or charity, or gossip. She came with purpose, with obedience, with kindness that felt like a lifeline tossed to a drowning man. His defenses weakened. His resolve cracked. His loneliness rose to the surface, raw and too big to hide. "Miss Wheeler," he said slowly, "you shouldn't have come." "I know. But you still did." She nodded. "Then, why?" he asked again, voice barely above a whisper, as if maybe the first answer wasn't enough, or maybe he needed to hear it again to believe it. Anna Grace met his eyes. "Because the Lord told me you shouldn't be alone today." Not just today, Elijah thought. Every day. Every night. Every passing moment since Sarah left this earth. But he didn't say that. Instead he swallowed hard. His voice dropped to the faintest whisper. One the wind could have stolen if it wanted to. "I don't know what to do with that." Anna Grace stepped back, giving him space. "You don't have to do anything," she said softly. "Just let someone care." That was the one thing he didn't know how to do anymore. And the one thing he suddenly realized he needed. He stepped aside, reluctantly, uncertainly, awkwardly, but he did it. The first open door in 3 years. "Come in, Miss Wheeler," he murmured. And she did. Carrying a pie. Carrying warmth. Carrying a piece of hope he didn't ask for but silently, desperately needed. The Boone house creaked faintly as Elijah stepped aside and let her in, as though the walls themselves were surprised to feel company again. Anna Grace paused just inside the threshold, allowing her eyes to adjust to the dim light filtering in through the single uncovered window. She held the pie close to her as if afraid a sudden movement might break the delicate peace forming between them. Elijah watched her. Not suspiciously. Not coldly. Just lost. As though he wasn't quite sure if she was real or a memory he'd conjured up from loneliness. Her boots clicked softly on the wooden floor as she walked farther in. The house wasn't dirty. Elijah wasn't the type to let things fall into chaos. But it was still the home of a man who had stopped living and started only surviving. Dust lined the mantel. The curtains hung limp and faded. The table bore the scratches of years' worth of meals eaten in silence. No warmth. No scent of food. No sign of celebration for Thanksgiving. Just 4 walls holding the ache of a man who didn't know how to move on. Anna Grace felt a tightening in her chest. Not pity, but compassion deep enough to ache. The kitchen that once held joy. The kitchen was the first room she entered, and the moment she did, she understood something without him saying a word. This was Sarah Boone's space. Even years later, it felt touched by someone who loved it. The apron still hung on a hook near the stove, faded and unused but clean. A ceramic bowl, hand-painted, cracked on the side, rested on the counter. And a single cast-iron skillet sat on the stove as if waiting for the woman who once knew exactly how hot it should be to fry biscuits golden. Elijah lingered in the doorway, eyes on the floor. "The coffee pot's clean if you want some," he muttered, voice rough. "I'm all right," Anna Grace replied kindly. He nodded once, grateful she didn't press. The pie on the table. She set the tin gently in the center of the table, unwrapping the cloth with slow, deliberate care. As the lid came off, warm pumpkin spice filled the room, threading through the stillness like a hymn that dared to wake sleeping memories. Elijah inhaled sharply. He hadn't realized until that moment how long it had been since he smelled something baked with love. "And you carried this 10 miles?" he murmured. "Yes," Anna Grace said simply. He shook his head, bewildered but visibly softened by the gesture. Folks don't do things like this anymore, he said, a quiet truth scraping out. Maybe they don't, she agreed. But the Lord still asks us to. The breaking point he didn't see coming. She turned toward him gently. Elijah, she began, dropping the formality, and the sound of his name coming from her lips made him look up. It was the first time anyone had said his name inside this house in almost 3 years. A man could grow parched from that kind of silence. You're not forgotten, she said. He blinked hard. What? Twice. His throat bobbed. If you came to preach, he warned softly. I didn't. He looked almost relieved. Almost. But I did come to remind you of something you already know. He stiffened but didn't turn away. You're still loved, Elijah. His hands curled into fists at his sides, an instinctive defense against the tenderness he didn't know how to receive. Not by everyone, he muttered, bitterness slipping through. By God. That stopped him. He exhaled slowly, deeply, like someone punched the wind from his lungs. God. He scoffed quietly. If God still loved me, he wouldn't have taken. His voice broke mid-sentence. Like it physically hurt to push the words out. Anna Grace stepped closer. Not intruding, but present. Elijah, she whispered gently, grief doesn't mean God abandoned you. He squeezed his eyes shut, jaw trembling. You don't know what it's like, he rasped. To lose everything and feel like the world kept turning without you. Her heart ached for him. You're right, she said honestly. I don't know your pain. I would never pretend to. He opened his eyes slowly, meeting hers. But I know the Lord didn't leave you in it. Elijah's shoulders crumpled slightly. The weight he carried seemed to settle visibly. She reached out, slowly, giving him time to pull back if he wanted. He didn't. Her hand touched his forearm. Warm. Gentle. Reassuring in a way he hadn't felt since the last time Sarah held his hand. His breath hitched. The first honest confession. It hurts, he whispered. The words came out broken. Raw. Like a confession pulled from the deepest part of him. It still hurts, Anna Grace. Every day. Her thumb brushed lightly against his sleeve. I know. He swallowed hard. Sometimes I think if I ignore it, if I stay quiet enough, the memories will stop hurting. And do they? She asked softly. He shook his head. No. They get louder. She nodded with understanding. Elijah, trying not to feel grief doesn't heal it. It only buries it where it can't breathe. He looked away, voice tight. I'm tired of hurting. And the Lord is ready to give you rest, she said. Not in a fiery preacher's tone. Not with pressure. But with quiet certainty. The kind that slips past defenses and wraps around the human heart. The moment that changed everything. Elijah inhaled deeply. Then, barely audible. Why did you really come, Anna Grace? She held his gaze. Because the Lord put your name on my heart. And because no one should spend Thanksgiving alone. Not when God has not abandoned them, and not when others are willing to walk miles to remind them. His eyes shimmered, though he blinked it back fiercely. Emotions he'd buried under work, silence, and grief cracked wide open. He turned his face slightly away, voice hoarse. I don't deserve this. No one said anything about deserving it, Anna Grace replied, voice warm. Grace isn't earned. It's given. He stilled. Then looked at her with a mixture of vulnerability and disbelief. Anna. I don't know how to accept kindness anymore. That's all right, she said softly. I'm not asking you to know how. I'm just asking you to not shut the door. For the first time Elijah smiled, small, fragile, unsure but real. The kind of smile a man hasn't worn in years. You walked 10 miles for a stubborn man, he murmured. I walked 10 miles for a man God loves, she corrected gently. He exhaled shakily. And sat down at the table. Something inside him finally surrendering. Finally loosening. Finally letting light in. Then, would you join me? He asked. Of course, she said, taking a seat opposite him. 2 souls. 1 pie. A small kitchen filled with healing. And for the first time in 3 years. Elijah Boone bowed his head again. The wind had changed by late afternoon. It carried a softer breath, as if the sky itself exhaled after the storm. Snow no longer fell in heavy sheets but drifted gently, lazily, as though each flake had grown tired. The ranch, which had looked cold and abandoned the night before, now seemed touched. Brushed by something holy. Nathan adjusted the rope on the fence post he'd been reinforcing. Can't let winter win, he murmured to himself. But the truth was, his mind wasn't on the fence. It was on Lily. And the things she'd said that morning still looped inside him like an echo he couldn't escape. God didn't forget you. He sent me. It was absurd. Impossible. Hopeful. Terrifying. Nathan Prescott had built an entire life around not needing anyone. Not letting anyone through the door of his heart. Not trusting promises, because promises had a habit of dying in childbirth just like his sister, or walking away like his father, or fading like every prayer he'd ever whispered. But Lily said God still heard. Lily said God still cared. He kicked at a patch of snow, annoyed that her words warmed something inside him. I don't need warming. He told himself that twice. Maybe 3 times. But it didn't stick. Cut to inside the ranch house. Lily stood at the table peeling potatoes for dinner. Normally she hummed while she cooked, little church songs, gentle tunes that sounded like sunlight feels, but today she was quiet. Not sad. Just thoughtful. The kind of thoughtful that sits deep. She kept replaying the moment Nathan broke, when he confessed he felt forgotten by God. When his voice cracked. When the loneliness came out of him like a wound finally given air. She whispered under her breath, Lord, give me the words he needs, not the words I'd choose. She placed the peeled potatoes into the iron pot, set it on the stove and wiped her hands on her apron. The house was warm but she could still feel yesterday inside her bones, the 10-mile walk, the storm, the fear, the knowing she had to get that pie to him. Then she heard the door. Nathan entered, brushing snow off his coat. His beard had grown thicker these last few days, making the hardness of his jaw look even more pronounced. But she saw it. His eyes softened when he looked at her. Not a lot. Just a fraction. But a fraction was enough. Fence is Holden, he said. She smiled gently. I knew it would. You built it. He cleared his throat. Somehow her confidence in him always made him uneasy, as though he didn't deserve it. Dinner passed quietly. Soft clinks of spoons. Crackling fire. 2 souls who didn't know how to talk about the thing that stood between them, God's love. Lily finally set her spoon down, folded her hands on the table and looked at him. Nathan, can we talk? He tensed instantly. About what? About yesterday. About what you said. There's nothing more to say. His voice was gentle yet guarded, like a man shutting the last door in a house full of them. But Lily didn't withdraw. She leaned forward slightly, voice low. You told me you feel like God forgot you. I think that's the first honest thing you've said about your heart. Nathan's jaw clenched. You think I lie? No, she said softly. I think you hurt. The fire popped. Silence grew between them like tall grass. He swallowed hard. Hurt don't matter. Ain't a thing that fixes it. Lily stood up slowly, walked around the table and sat beside him, not across from him like before. Close enough that he could feel the warmth of her presence. Close enough that he couldn't hide. Nathan, hurt absolutely matters. To God most of all. He shook his head. If it mattered, he'd have stepped in a long time ago. Her voice broke just a little, not from sadness but from compassion so deep it trembled. He did. He looked up sharply, eyes meeting hers. When he gave his son. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the strength of someone who'd walked 10 miles in a storm just to obey a nudge from heaven. And when he sent me. Nathan inhaled slowly as if her words were pulling breath from his soul. Lily continued, speaking tenderly, carefully. I didn't bring you that pie because I'm stubborn, or foolish, or reckless. She gently touched her chest. I brought it because the Lord wouldn't let me rest. He kept saying, go. He needs kindness. She paused. And loneliness is a dangerous thing, Nathan. It lies. It makes you think you're invisible. But you're not. His eyes grew glassy, not quite tears but not far from them. And if God loved me so much, he said quietly, why'd he let everything fall apart? Her heart squeezed at the question. She reached for his hand. He stiffened, almost pulled away, then let her take it. Nathan Prescott, things falling apart doesn't mean God left you. It means he's making room. For what? Nathan whispered. For healing. She squeezed his hand gently. For people who won't leave. She inhaled softly. For a future bigger than the ache behind you. Nathan stared at their joined hands as if holding hers might set off an avalanche inside him. Lily? His voice had cracked again. What if I don't know how to trust God anymore? Her answer came like a warm blanket. Then lean on my faith until yours comes back. He looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who walked 10 miles. This woman who prayed over his house. This woman who spoke God's love as naturally as breathing. Why? He asked, same question he'd asked when she delivered the pie. Lily smiled, eyes glistening. Because you're alone, And God doesn't want you to be. Nathan swallowed hard, then exhaled slowly, as if letting go of something he'd held too tight for too long. Would you? He stopped, unsure. Would I what? She encouraged gently. Would you pray with me? Lily's breath caught. Not because she was surprised, but because she could almost feel heaven lean closer. Yes, she whispered. I'd be honored. Nathan bowed his head, awkward and uncertain. Lily took both his hands this time and prayed, slow, soft, steady. Lord, thank you that you never forget your children. Thank you for loving Nathan. Thank you for seeing him when he felt unseen, and for hearing him when he felt unheard. Heal his heart. Restore what's been broken. And remind him he is yours. Nathan didn't speak, didn't move. But one perfect tear slipped down his cheek. He didn't wipe it. He let it fall. And Lily saw it. Bitterness had cracked. Hope leaked out. When the prayer ended, she didn't move away. He didn't either. The fire hummed. Snow whispered at the window. And two lonely hearts sat side by side. No longer as lonely as they'd been the day before. The next morning rose slow and gold, the kind of sunrise that seemed painted by a patient hand. The light stretched over Nathan's ranch, climbing over snowdrifts, touching the barn roof, gliding across the frosted corral rails like it wanted to make everything new. Inside the house, Lily stirred awake on the small cot Nathan had brought down from the attic. She blinked as sunlight touched her face and let out a sleepy breath, thinking, Lord, thank you for yesterday. Nathan was already up. She could hear him moving outside, steady footsteps, the rhythmic thump of hay hitting wooden troughs. She wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and stepped out onto the porch. And stopped. Because what she saw made her chest warm. Nathan, stubborn, self-sufficient, solitary Nathan, was whistling. Softly. But genuinely. He paused when he saw her. Oh. Mornin', he said, clearing his throat as if embarrassed to have been caught sounding cheerful. She smiled softly. Morning. You sleep all right? He asked. I did. Better than I expected. He nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. Good. It was awkward. But sweetly awkward. The kind of awkward two people share when something has shifted, quietly but permanently. Nathan feeding the horses. Lily approached the fence, watching him toss oats into a barrel. Old Jasper, the big chestnut gelding, nudged Nathan's shoulder playfully. You two get along, she said. Nathan's lips tilted just slightly. He's good company. Still lonely company, Lily replied gently. Nathan didn't answer, but the comment settled into him. She could tell. He felt it. She walked closer, touching Jasper's mane. He loves you. I can see that. Nathan glanced at her involuntarily, studying her face. Animals don't judge, he murmured. No, she agreed. But they also don't heal the human heart. He swallowed. Art. You're not letting this go, are you? He said, almost amused. No, she said simply. Not when God won't let me. Nathan exhaled slowly, and for the first time, he didn't resist the comfort. Breakfast. Inside, Lily cooked eggs and biscuits while Nathan fetched firewood. He carried more than needed, stacking it as if the movement soothed him. When they sat down to eat, something new hovered in the air. Not tension. Not silence. Just awareness. Nathan buttered his biscuit. Your prayer last night? He cleared his throat. It stayed with me. Lily looked up gently. Prayer often does. It has roots. He took a slow breath. I ain't prayed in a long time. I know. I forgot how it feels. Like someone's listening. He is, she answered softly. Even now. Nathan stared at his plate, nodding once. Then he said something she didn't expect. Thank you. For what? She asked. For seeing me. Her breath caught. She didn't smile, not a big smile anyway. Just a trembling, grateful one. You're welcome. Fixing the chicken coop. Later that morning, the wind grew colder, and Nathan invited her outside to help reinforce the chicken coop walls. The storm last night had knocked a board loose. Hand me that hammer? He asked. She passed it to him. He worked with steady hands, firm swings, strong arms. There was something reassuring about watching him work, like watching a safe place take shape. You're good at this, she said. He shrugged. Work's the easy part. Always has been. What's the hard part? She asked knowingly. He hesitated just a moment too long. Talkin', he admitted. Feelin'. Prayin'. She leaned her hands on the fence. Well, you did one of those last night. Barely. Barely counts, she said with a warm grin. He huffed out a breath, something between a laugh and disbelief. You don't give up on a man, do you? Lily's voice softened. Not when God says he isn't done with him. Nathan froze. You like that? More than he knew how to say. The walk to the ridge. Around midday, Nathan surprised her. You want to take a walk? He asked. Lily blinked. A walk? Yeah. There's a ridge overlooking the property. Used to go there with my sister. Haven't been there since. His voice trailed. She felt the weight of what he didn't say. I'd like that, she replied. They bundled up and stepped into the cold. The snow crunched softly beneath their boots. Their breaths puffed in little clouds, drifting toward the blue winter sky. At first they walked in silence. The good kind. Then Nathan spoke quietly. You ever lose someone? He asked. Yes, she answered. A few. How'd you deal with it? I didn't, she admitted. Not for a long time. I just kept moving, hoping the pain would get tired of following me. Nathan's steps slowed. Did it? No, she said. But God caught up with me before the grief did. Nathan looked down at her, eyes studying the faith in her voice. I used to think God only shows up for people like you, he murmured. What does that mean? You know, good people. Church people. People who deserve him. She stopped walking. Nathan Prescott, she said, voice firm, God doesn't divide his love into who deserves it and who doesn't. If he did, none of us would have it. He blinked. Her conviction stirred something deep, something long buried. The ridge. They reached the ridge and Nathan stopped. The view opened wide, rolling snow-covered fields, quiet pines, distant mountains watching like sentries. This, he said softly, was our place. Mine and Emily's. My sister. Lily's expression softened with understanding. She loved this view, he continued. Said it made her feel closer to heaven. He rubbed a hand over his jaw. When she died, I stopped coming. Felt wrong being here without her. Lily touched his sleeve gently. I think she'd want you here today. He didn't speak, but tears gathered. He blinked them back roughly. Lily whispered, Nathan, it's okay to cry. He swallowed hard. Not used to crying in front of people. You're not in front of people, she said gently. You're in front of someone who cares. The words hit him deep, deeper than she realized. A tear escaped. He let it fall. For the first time in years, Nathan Prescott didn't hide his pain. He let the wind take it. Let the sky witness it. Let Lily see it. And she didn't turn away. She didn't say anything foolish or preachy. She simply slipped her hand into his. He didn't let go. Heading back. The walk back was different. Lighter. Warmer. Closer. At one point, Nathan said quietly, Thank you for walking with me. She looked up. Always. He paused. He didn't know what to do with the warmth in his chest, the unusual comfort, the sense that someone was finally, on his side. Lily, he began carefully. Yeah, she said. You being here, it don't feel like an accident. It isn't, she said simply. He took a slow breath. Maybe God ain't done with me after all. Her smile was soft and full of joy. No, Nathan. He never was. The ranch house, sunset. Later, when they returned to the house, Lily heated stew while Nathan removed his coat. The air between them hummed, gentle, full, like the space shared by two people beginning to understand each other's value. At the stove, Lily whispered a quiet prayer. Lord, let this be the beginning of his healing. Across the room, Nathan whispered something too. God, if you're real, don't stop now. And for the first time in years, Nathan felt heard. Thanksgiving morning arrived with a peace that felt almost holy. Not the loud kind, just a gentle stillness, like creation itself was holding its breath. The snow had stopped sometime in the night, leaving the ranch blanketed in soft white. The sky, washed in pastel pinks and golds, looked like a promise spoken silently over the earth. Inside the house, the fire glowed hot in the hearth. The scent of warm cinnamon, roasted squash, and the remnants of yesterday's stew lingered in the air. Lily stood at the wooden counter, tying her apron. She had work to do. A Thanksgiving meal wasn't going to cook itself. But she paused. Because this wasn't any ordinary morning. Today, she wasn't cooking alone. Nathan walked into the kitchen slowly, almost shyly, holding an armful of chopped wood. You didn't have to start the fire, Lily told him. He shrugged, setting the pieces by the stove. You were cold, he answered simply. It was such a small thing. But his voice, soft, intentional, carried a tenderness she'd never heard from him before. Thank you, she whispered. He nodded, then reached into the cupboard and awkwardly pulled down a pan. What are you doing? She asked, surprised. Helpin', he said. The way he said it, gruff but oddly proud, made her heart warm. "You want to cook?" she asked gently. He avoided her eyes. "Well, I can chop, stir, burn stuff if you need it burnt." She laughed, a soft, delighted sound Nathan didn't realize he'd missed until it filled his kitchen again. "Come here," she said, motioning him closer. "We'll do this together." The Thanksgiving preparations. They moved around each other like an unfolding dance, awkward at first, then easy, natural, almost intimate in its gentleness. Nathan mashed potatoes with entirely too much force. Lily giggled. "You're not fighting the potatoes, Nathan." He grunted. "Feels like they're fighting me." When she reached over to guide his hand, her fingers brushed his knuckles. He froze but didn't pull away. Lord, her heart whispered, "Be in this kitchen. Be in this moment." Nathan stirred the gravy, eyeing it suspiciously. "Is it supposed to look like that?" "Yes," she assured. "It looks like something crawled in and died in there." She laughed again, pure, bright, filling the room like sunlight. "Trust the process," she told him. His eyes lingered on her longer than before. "Startin' to," he murmured. "The pie." Finally, after hours of chopping, stirring, kneading, fussing, laughing, and cooperating, Lily pulled out the last task. "The pie tin." Nathan stiffened. "Another one? This one's for us." He swallowed. He didn't say it, but the memory of the first pie, the journey she made, the storm, the words she spoke, washed over him like a soft tide. She rolled the dough while he watched, arms crossed, quietly amazed by how graceful she seemed when doing ordinary things. "You know," he said softly, "I've been thinking about that day you showed up." "Oh?" she asked, not looking up. I still don't get it." She placed the rolling pin down. "Get what?" "Why you walked 10 miles for me." His voice tightened with emotion he tried to hide. "For a man you didn't know. For a man who didn't think he mattered anymore." She stepped closer. Slow. Careful. "Because God put you on my heart," she said softly. "And because the lonely matter to him more than they know." Nathan swallowed hard, throat tight. "And now," he whispered, "what do you think of me now?" Lily looked up, really looked at him. And her answer was simple. "I think you matter, Nathan Prescott. I think you matter more than you ever believed." His breath caught. He turned away, only slightly, but she saw the emotion shimmering behind his eyes. The meal. They sat at the small wooden table, hands folded. Snow fell outside in lazy flakes. The house glowed warm. The food steamed beautifully, roast turkey, mashed potatoes, gravy, vegetables, and the pie cooling on the counter. Nathan bowed his head. Lily waited for him to pray. But instead, he reached for her hand. Her heart skipped. Nathan's rough fingers wrapped around hers, strong but trembling. "Do you mind if—" He swallowed. "If I say the prayer today?" Lily felt tears well, unexpected, grateful, overwhelming. "I would love that," she whispered. Nathan closed his eyes and spoke a prayer that felt like the cracking open of an old, dry well finally touched by rain. "God, it's been a while. But thank you. For food. For this roof. For keeping me alive when I didn't think it mattered much. And thank you for sending Lily." His voice wavered. She walked 10 miles for a lonely fool. And she made me believe you ain't done with me yet. So, I guess, I'm asking you to keep showing me. Keep teaching me how to hope again." A tear slipped down his cheek. He let it fall. "Amen," he whispered. Lily didn't wipe her tears either. "Amen," she echoed. After the meal. Later that evening, they stepped onto the porch to watch the sky fade into lavender. Nathan stood beside her, hands in his pockets, shoulders relaxed in a way she'd never seen before. "Lily," he said quietly. "Yes. I don't know what God's doing with my life or where all this is headed." He paused, gathering courage. "But I know one thing." "What's that?" she asked softly. He turned to her, eyes full of something new. Something tender. Something hopeful. "I'm glad you walked those 10 miles. Lily's breath trembled, not from the cold but from the warmth in his voice. "So am I," she whispered. He hesitated, only a moment, then reached out and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. A small gesture. But it carried the weight of a heart learning how to love again. "Happy Thanksgiving, Lily," he said softly. She smiled, full, radiant, grateful. "Happy Thanksgiving, Nathan." Snow began to fall again, quiet and delicate. And somewhere inside the quiet of that winter evening, two hearts once lonely, once guarded, once broken, took a small but unmistakable step toward healing together.